today is the first day of peace. Oh, the enemy's weapons haven't been collected yet, and lie scattered on the ground like useless offerings. How quickly the wind of dawn erased the traces of the Argives' flight. When the sunlight dazzles as it does this morning, it seems that the past is more distant. But no, they left only last night, no more nights ago. Before our last dream came the chaos of their stampede. They came like armed eagles and landed on our roofs and stationed at our 7 gates 7 renowned captains who never silenced their sinister calls of war. But Zeus, who hates the fanfare of a proud tongue, was favorable. Hunted by our troops, they ran for their lives, those who cried they came to drink our blood. Well, they didn't. Well, let's thank today for life and the sun and peace, which is a transparent air, and let's start to forget. The shepherds drove the sheep and goats past the Theban hills, where the grass isn't dirtied with blood. They'll return, when all the dead from the war are buried and new pastures grow over the graves. Hasten, grave diggers, be wise and mingle in one tomb our soldiers and the enemy's, since both are made of the same flesh and cause the air to reek just the same. Do you see that dead body lying perfectly on its side on the dry soil? His name is Polynices. And though almost nude, he still wears the shining badge of an Argive captain. He died in a perverse game of the gods. They see battles as spectacles, careless as to who wounds whom in the roar of combat, or which arrow arches towards a precise body. But at one of the 7 gates, they willed a quarrel between 2 chosen men, our captain Eteocles and the attacking captain Polynices. Oh, perverse game. 2 warriors, long spears, stood facing each other, spewing reproaches, both lonely in their dazzling armors. Oh, perverse game, born of the same mother and of one father. The movement was simultaneous. One spear advanced and the other came forward, and this death was split, but completed in each brother. It is the fate of the weak to produce masters. Just as in dreams we devise creatures for our fears, and the sleeper alone sees them and suffers. But I am awake now, and seeing Creonte frightens me. Crowned yesterday, he is the most recent king of Thebes. However, his brow is already furrowed. Here he comes down the steps of his palace, and I know he isn't bringing in his mouth cheerful words. Our country is again quiet. After the violent floods of war, things have settled and function as they used to. Look around. The wine is in the vessels. The servants beat the rugs outside the windows, and love nestles back, and happily in equal portions, among immortals and ephemeral men. And all the dead from the war are covered with earth. Except for one. Except for one! Polynices' corpse will remain unburied, meat of contention and satiation for the birds and voracious dogs. Because he, an exile, was willing to come with the cruel Argives and rejoice as the fire consumed his parents' town. The no tomb for him is my resolution, because never shall the unjust receive more honor than the just, and let it thus be proclaimed. And let the punishment also be proclaimed. He who fulfills the funerary rites, who mourns him or covers him with dust, will add his own death to the dead. Now, Let us go and conclude the honorary rites for his brother Eteocles. Prepare the carriages, horses, flowers, banners. And you, war captains, offer locks of your hair, which will be consumed with the body of that man whose cause was his country. Now, let us forget bygone struggles and go to the temples of the gods with nocturnal dances. And may Bacchus be our god. The girl, more child than woman, sitting on that patio, what grief serenely borne. The sister of the two dead, one honored with a tomb, the other disgraced without one. She watches us from a distance as we pass. The guilt we suffer is within us, Thebans, not in the intention of her gaze, because no one, not even the wisest of counselors, dared to defy Creonte's order, harmful to our soul. Where do your sorrows fly, girl? What blazes in your heart, ANTíGONA? Where do your sorrows fly, girl? To Zeus, who unleashed upon your family as much pain as exists in the world? Or to the king, who now shows no mercy to your brother? A scepter, a throne, and courtesies too many pay court to Creonte. Oh, king, you didn't need much to end up speaking like a tyrant. No one knows the true heart of a man until he is tested in power. Before the war, he used to walk around this garden, whistling. He'd stroked my head, the head of his niece, and then disappear into the sunny atrium. Well, it was another son, and I another niece. Today, that same man orders now that I rejoice with victory, and let unburied Polynices dissolve into oblivion as if he were not my brother. How am I to enter the temples dancing and singing if there is a corpse lying without burial on the rugged hill? How to offer libations rubbing out what my eyes cannot see, but surely is? It is a corpse surrounded by guards watched night and day, so that not even the wind might sprinkle him with dust. But if you are a bird or a dog, you can come close and tear him apart and bite the precious flesh of my brother. My brother, no longer my kin, but everyone's corpse. Tell me what I should do. It was the god's will that you were born a female, ANTíGONA. Little can you do but obey the laws, should they fall upon the dead or upon us who are still living. You have in your heart fiery thoughts, desires of disobedience that would cause others to freeze or turn into statues of fear. Rest. Let dream be a peaceful truce while the long night passes. Sleep. The swift sandals of the guard, who takes the shorter path, running through the hills, are so swift that they rush morning. What message palpitates on his tongue? What news drains his haste? What fresh calamity does he enfold in sealed words? Now he walks up the dewy stairs of the palace. Now he only has breath to ask to be announced to the king. How hard it is to reach you, king, not because of the height of your power, but due to my fear in bringing you this mouthful of news. How many times I slowed in my haste as the heart kept saying, turn around, go back, be careful, for as soon as you give the message, you'll pay for it. With these thoughts whirling, a short path gave me a longer path. Yes, I know I'm blithering to prolong my time, and all it has earned me is your regal impatience. Let the news be, then. Last night someone buried Polynices. No, it is not that the man is sheltered beneath the earth. It's just that someone sprinkled a fine dust over his body. Someone started the burial rite, but the coming of dawn forced him to run away. Guard against guard, we have accused each other. But I ask you, would it be human negligence if the rebel were a god? That thought silenced suddenly our argument out there on the hill. You would agree, master, that whomever comes and goes should leave traces. And there were none. Not of foot, nor of wheel, nor of hose scratch. Does your gut not tell you, as it tells us, that the barrier came from the air, or that he is not a visible human substance? At Boreas Gate, the wind rustles like sad penance, the rags of that man who comes accused. Blamed he advances while the dutiful guards prod him with spears, and the crowd forms his walking hem. They say he was roaming around Polynices' corpse, and there was soil under his nails. There he is, Creonte, the one who challenged your order last night. Are you going to judge him? Ludicrous judgment, king, or farce? How will you restore sanity to his mind if the man is mad? He is the fool who has been begging for many years now at Antígona's monument. Today, a prisoner, he cries that was just looking for my dog up there on the hill. Other voices resound in his head, tormented in his madness, where there are no kings, no heroes, no traitors, but only a dog. I remember. The groves were in full blossom, and Antígona would run about with her friends and laugh like a little fawn. The first drops of menstrual blood were the only sign of tremor, clean and brilliant. And the only omen was the wind, as it fitted the dresses to their bodies, announcing them ripe and desirable. Nothing foretold of the somber girl, who now walks alone under the pine trees and leans her cheek on the rough bark so that nothing in her may rest calmly. The gods of the grove look at her, and none from their marble console her. Oh, gods, when you could have made us of invisible substance, of stone that needs no burial, why make us of rotting matter of flesh that doesn't resist the invisible forces of putrefaction? How lewd, how shameless to meet one's end unburied, displaying for the eyes of the living gelatinous and viscous matter. Such punishment and worse my brother suffers, for he is provision for vermin, vultures, and dogs to tear at. Tall pine trees who saw me walking as a child, can you see my brother? Has the wind blown away the dust I sprinkled over his naked body at sunrise? Will I have the courage to mock the doubled guard again, or should I surrender his body to be nothing more than bones and an oily stain on the gravel at the waking of autumn? No! Do not answer. Today every word or whisper sets foot in my nightmare and kindles it more. It was midnight, and Creonte's palace looked like a ship, safe and anchored. The wind abated, and the torches burned with a flame immobile, blue. Looking at the building, I thought about the modes of power. There lies a man sleeping in merciless silk, I told myself. And suddenly, from the highest room, a light turned on, and another. And I saw Creonte pacing and pacing, troubled. Did a bad dream wake him? Or was it the sting of suspicion that shivers in the skin of every tyrant? The guard talked with a superstitious tongue. Not seeing any traces, he and his foolish mates suspected a divinity attempting to bury the corpse of Polynices. But what god would take on such trouble for someone who approached the gates of the city with blazing torches raised to burn temples, shrines, and sacred treasures? Or have we come to a time when false gods exalt traitors? No. Now I see. The foolishness of the guard was a pretense, and the gravedigger god a device to mask the bribe for his complicity. Some people resent that they don't have a place close to me. The eyes I've sent out into the city have seen how they shake their heads and mutter slander. The corpse on the hill does not hurt them. My power hurts them. And to weaken it, they let a few coins drop into the venal palm of a sentinel. Indeed, my servant's bold attempt can only be explained by profit. And then they wanted to confuse me, like an ingenuous king from fables, trading a god for a fool who kneeled before me and babbled amidst drool and tears. Power and treason are stamped on the same coin. The day I gave my first order, I was first betrayed. The funerary mask of Polynices disappeared, the one I forged to give a face to the enemy before he lost his traits under the sun as I commanded. Oh, traitors, tremble! For you as well, death won't be the only punishment. I've seen ANTíGONA running, furtive, from one pillar to the other, from one corner to another, as if hiding from an invisible eye. As she rushed out the Boreas gate, her dress seemed to move on its own, like a white sheet dangling from a clothesline. I lost sight of her as she entered the plane, carrying a thought that transmuted her face and magnified her beauty as she hurried under the midday sun. Polynices, my brother, you may wonder how I've made my way to you. Every man has his arrogance. And as for the sentinels, they trust that in such a dazzling hour there could be no daring. I thank the north winds. Eddying and sweeping up the mountains, they lift columns of dust up to the clouds. Enveloped in a whirlwind I've come, flecked with straw, but the wine in my vessel is pure. How cruelly they've scraped away the dust I sprinkled over your body last night. They want for you a sky absolutely open, but I have come to open the earth for you. Let your body receive once again this sacred dust and these 3 wine libations from my mouth, but in the name of all. I risked being caught guard, but let me finish opening the earth so that she may be a mother to Polynices and receive him as she did Eteocles. They are now inalienable brothers. Guard, without faction or dispute, and perhaps mutually, they are reaching out to each other. In your heart, you know it is not right that one is covered with earth while the other is left to wander, a suffering soul, watching its carcass in pain or rage. For every death I want a funeral, and then oblivion. Caught in your bonds guard, my death begins. Remember my name, because one day everyone will say I was the sister who did not fail her brother. My name is ANTíGONA. People of Thebes, who peep and hide like curious monkeys, the one who walks the streets surrounded by sentinels like a preyed upon beast, is the one true princess of this land. Look at her now, as she steps up the stairs of the palace. Though the straps of her sandals are loosened, the bonds dig hard into the flesh of her sacred wrists. People of Thebes, already ANTíGONA and Creonte play their inescapable roles. She takes the seat of the prisoner, while he is now not only king, but the stentorian voice of fate in all its severity. Born of my sister's womb, joined by love with my son Ammon, you are, I suppose, closer to me than many. Double are the pain and anger that burn in my soul. It is just then that I apply to you a double rigor. My son Ammon wanders the corridors and halls in shock, knowing himself to be the groom of a sure convict. Because you have been condemned from the moment the order and the punishment were announced. And you laugh all the same. And your laughter is worse than the act of burial. For then you mocked simple and dull sentinels. But here, all your scorn and arrogance are in the face of your king. It is always easier to punish with death whomever commits a crime and then takes pride in himself. Your laughter will make the punishment even pleasant. But who laughs with you? Who are your partners in crime, hiding at home, rejoicing with your boldness? Did your sister Ismene help you? Is she the other head of the bicephalous snake? The snake only has one head, Creonte. My sister Ismene is blameless. Her boldest thoughts don't go past her shy gaze. You say I broke your law. Do you, a mortal, expect to prevail over the unwritten but unbreakable laws of the gods? They alone hold power over the bodies of the dead. They alone. Remember it. I know it well. Polinices came to ravage our country and Eteocles defended it. But in death, Hades grants them equal rights. As you see, I've chosen to obey the laws of the gods, not your arrogant whim. To die for such a cause is profit and does not hurt me. That my own mother's son remained unburied would hurt me. Keep calling him an enemy until your last day. But I was born to love, not to share hatred. You may say there's a mad ring to my words, but no, the tune is in your ears. Do you know that many Thebans would raise these same words, would call them out through the streets and squares, were fear not shutting their mouths? May the gods will, Creonte, that the privilege to dispense orders with impunity as it pleases you does not last long, and may they bring a prompt end to silence. We mustn't assume too much harshness in the heart of the king. I mean, surely he defeated countless doubts before sanctioning the young woman who vowed love to his son in his so near of blood. ANTíGONA, what beautiful and arrogant prey you are. Your escort of sentinels doesn't trouble your steady and magnificent gait. You look without longing at faces and windows, trees, lanes, the glister of sun in a latch, and 1,000 things that for you are final. They don't take you to the gallows. to an end that comes swift as an arrow or the blow of an axe. No. Creonte has appointed a death for the memory of all, a death they will voice like this. If he punishes his kin thus, what should other foes expect? You go, ANTíGONA, to a death longer and more perverse. Amid the rocks of the mountain, there are deep, capricious caves. Into one of them you will be cast and shut in with wide boards. It will become your prison. While endless hours prolong your hunger, thirst, and darkness. And then, it will become your secret and immense tomb, for not only the cave will harbor you, but the entire mountain. Darkness splits my body from its reality. I am only when I feel my skin or touch the rough stone of the cavern. I don't know if I speak when I speak. Maybe these words just hover mute inside my head. This and death I should pay in these times of twisted turmoils. Piety, which of old was virtue, condemns me and extends the woes of my family. Old men used to say that an ancient curse weighed down upon my father and mother, and that misfortunes like the waves of the sea would continue to break from one generation to the next. From here, though you can't hear me, old men, I remind you of a law from Olympus, which says that nothing great sets foot in the life of men without a curse. If peace is that great thing, I am the curse, that wayward wave that breaks and dies within its cavern. I am sorry for you, my beloved Amon. We were a woman and a man dreaming of bridal banquets, ceremonies, and bed. Someone else will be my groom now, and I will feast on this air, and I will sleep on this stone, which will seem to me of feathers on that last day. Since the crack of dawn, Amon wanders adrift, going back and forth, going nowhere, stopping only at the mountain to look where ANTíGONA slowly burns. What has happened in my country that I, so young, look with so much sorrow? Last night, Amon had an imprudent dream. He saw himself dead in a trice by a golden arrow from a sympathetic god, and thus pierced and finished, he entered in dreams the cave and looked among the shadows for the betrothed shadow of his lover. Dawn's light told him he was dreaming, and he hated the light. He stood up and walked adrift, all the same to tread on grass, stone, or gravel. A question ripened as he wandered. How far should the love for a father go? Should we pay the debt of birth even with the silent acceptance of injustices? Amon knows this is a rebellious question, but he carries it in his gait as he goes up to Creonte. Son, I hear it rumored that you resent your arrested wedding. But look at me. I am a king and a father. But not two persons. Not one unyielding and the other lenient. My domestic assertiveness must be prolonged to all corners of the fatherland, and I must be obeyed in all matters, those small and just, and even those that are not. To procreate is a risk, Amon. Children of small spirits are only objects of laughter for the enemy. But I have confidence in you. I have passed on to you my robust feelings, and I know that the appetite for female pleasure couldn't wither them. Know also that her naked embrace would be suspicious, if not frigid, behaving as she did as an enemy to our race. Let her find another groom in Hades, while you, my son, look to other maidens in other fertile fields. Being the son of a strong man is very strange. I hear you saying the words of a father mixed together with the laws and orders of a king. And I take it as a privilege, not seeing you as the high ruler who intimidates others. I ask permission to use this privilege to tell you what I see on the streets among the shadows. The city cries out for ANTíGONA. The modest citizens condemn the outrageous death you're giving her. They say, isn't she who wouldn't stand for her brother being left to the dogs more worthy of praise than punishment? Listen to them, Father. I should want for you a perfect wisdom, but the gods have not yet made such a man. Don't copy the hubristic man of 10,000 talents who when cracked was vacuous. Listen to the modest citizen, Father. Let not learning from them be a humiliation. Don't make laws from your sole judgment, because a fatherland cannot belong to a single man alone. Listen to the gods as well, Father. Look at the night. In its starry silence, they are asking you not to forget or thrash their rights upon the dead. Listen to them, Father, and yield and revoke the cruel order, so that we may celebrate peace and ANTíGONA the light. The lively goats frolic on the rocks and mate, unmindful that the cave inside the womb of the sunlit mountain is a perpetual prison and tomb and marriage bed. The sacred eye of daylight doesn't penetrate that far, nor do the cries of friends and relatives. In that silence, death laborious enfolds the girl in a dense cocoon of shadows. I want it to be the just grave digger, but a grave for myself is the prize I've received. Dear Father, dear Mother, brothers Eteocles and Polynices, I already feel the touch of your hands. You stretch them out to me from the other world. I will die without hymeneal songs or the touch of a husband, never having children. I have been but a daughter and a pleasing sister. Receive me as such. Mine is a curious death. My young body does not suffer a fatal or cruel disease, nor do I await the impossible blow of a blind axe to kill me, spilling my blood. I waste away slowly, and as I consume my life, it enters me and grows, this sweet abandonment we call death. A stranger passing by Thebes would see a town in order, a king ruling and a people working calmly. He would not see the turbulence under the still waters. Who would tell him that a young woman dies for her piety? Who would inform him that the young man who leaves the palace full of anger would peel off his skin if he could thus cease being the son of the king? And now we must suspect that the secret torrents will be worse, for here comes Tiresias, the old seer. A bad sign is his heavy walking, not with old age, but with the weight of his prophecies. The gods gifted Tiresias with a paradox. They made him blind so that he could see farther. And thus he goes, entrusting his steps to a guide towards Creonte. You could swear, king, that your throne stands on a vast pedestal of marble, but I see it on a razor's edge. Listen. Things are happening that point to fear. The 1,000 birds on my tree, joyful birds, were driven off by large raptors full of anger, who turned the tree into a battleground and brandished their claws to cruelly bleed one another. As I couldn't understand such violence, perhaps an omen of a future one, I rushed to offer sacrifices on the altar. I placed all the customary offerings on the fire, fresh humors of sheep and oxen, small gallbladders, everything anointed with fat so as to fuel the fire. But oh, the fire did not raise its tongues. And the fat melted over the embers, making a great smoke, and the bile spattered the dark and poisonous air. Tell me, Creonte, why did the gods reject my offering? And it is the same at all the altars, house by house, like a plague. Birds and dogs approach the fires as if following orders and pack them with Polynices scraps. Is my art of prophecy really necessary to interpret such signs? You defied the gods, Creonte, but all of Thebes pays for your insolence. I take my leave, asking you to stop pricking the corpse, bury it. Let it be said you had the courage to rectify your mistake, not that you were brave to kill a man already dead. No one around. Creonte sits alone at the center of the great hall. He looks at himself in the mirror and sees a vexed man drinking wine. And no one around. The wine comes from the royal vines, but his thoughts fall into the glass and distort the drink. And no one around. Who isn't against me? My son, Aemon, under the yoke of a vile woman. Tiresias, the old seer, who blames me for the dead fires, unaware that the gods, fully sated, don't want offerings from cowards. Who isn't shooting arrows at me? Who wouldn't trade me as merchandise if there were a buyer? But I'll say it once again. No one will bury Polynices under the earth, even if the eagles tear apart his corpse and carry the scraps all the way up to the very throne of Zeus. Tiresias, the old man with dead eyes, turns his whole body into an enormous eye to see the things not of today's, but tomorrow's. Last night he could not enter into sleep, seeing only the calamities the time hastens to Thebes. As soon as he felt the morning sun on his old skin, he placed his hand on the guide's shoulder and set foot onto the royal road. He carries premonitions, awful deeds that he can't keep shut in his mouth any longer. I come to you once again, Creonte, to ask your humble silence that you listen to them coming. The furies from Hades and from the gods. They are closing in swift and vengeful. And you are their inescapable prey. You, believing your swollen power enough to rule in other realms, retain Polynices here in the world below when he belongs, like all dead, to the world above. And playing the opposite game, you keep Antígona locked in a cavern that is a dead person's tomb, while she, though fainting, is still alive. Last night I received visions of your downfall. I tried driving them from my mind, moistening my forehead with fresh water, but they came back over and over. I saw the terrible requital of the gods. Of all men, they took one, of your own being, the dearest. Even now, as I speak, I can smell the long scent of blood coming ahead of time, maybe from tomorrow. Prevent, Creonte, the coming flight of the Furies. Make them cease their retaliation and go back to their worlds. Let go of your blindness. It is worse than mine, not of flesh, but of arrogance. And listen, you know that advice is greater when it averts the worst of evils, and this counsel I am lending you is among the greatest. Bury the dead man and free his faithful sister promptly, for every hour the blood coming to you smells closer. There is no worse torture than one's own imagination. And Antígona does not fade in my mind. I see her waiting for an impossible drop of water to form on the arid rock and fall into her thirsty mouth. Or groping in that forbidding world for a bitter green for her infinite hunger. Or muttering slow words so that her own voice accompanies her as she falls into lethargy, folding forward like a wax figurine. I dreamed of dawn. How absurd! I dreamed of dawn. Perhaps dawn's light falls on top of the mountain, but it wouldn't have the luminous quality of my dream. The light I saw was different. I wanted to enter it and dissolve in its nimble quality. Oh, that were the road to step into Hades, and I were a sudden light, a body removed from this torture long and perverse. Oh, if only I could take that road, that quick gate, that short path. From early morning, the royal trumpets called the people to the gates of the palace. But today, the Thebans, once all obeying, came carrying reproach. They will cry out that their altars remain useless, the fires quenched by Polynices' scraps. But Creonte has surprised them. He came out to the atrium with a different countenance. No one knows if moved by reason or fear, but he is like a fisherman who loosened 100 knots all night. And the next morning, satisfied and peaceful, looks at his smooth rope. 100 knots all night. And no one knows if loosened by reason or fear. People of Thebes, to give an order and then take it back must not be a habit of government. But if such an order produces sorrow, and if insisting upon it can thrust a people and myself into fatality, then it is time to revoke it. You've privately been waiting for this decision. Let your hearts be gladdened then on this day, because I'm giving you permission to go, bury the dead man, bring him amid songs, his right to be sheltered in this his native land. And I will make the opposite gesture. I'm setting off to the mountain to break the seal of stone, cloistering Antígona and keeping her far from the light and from my son Aemon's love, who has looked at me sideways for days now. Let us all go soon, and may the gods be pleased, seeing us at work. The stone seal was broken. And as he arrived, Creonte looked at the opening in the wall, incredulous and offended, condensing for the skies and the earth all of his anger into one question. Who dared, he cried. Through the opening, more the making of desperate claws than human hands, guards went in with torches, and the king with his anger. As they advanced to the dark depths, a dreadful moan reached them. It was a moan, but Creonte denied it, saying it was a cruel joke from the gods. Did you also wish to deny, King, the image the torches illuminated? Antígona, hanging from her fine neck, fastened by a red silk ribbon to a ledge in the rock. And they moan, embracing her corpse by the waist, lamenting his late daring to break the seal. When the boy felt the light, he turned his face, and more fire burned in his eyes than in the torches. Bitterness produces an acidic spit, and with this he splattered the face of his father before attacking him with the double edge of his sword. The sun only wounded the air, the empty space left by Creonte's agile and swerving body. His attack outsmarted, Aemon lifted his sword and thrust it into his own chest, a fierce sign of wrath against his own father. Life was with him only enough to turn around, embrace Antígona, and wet the pale cheeks of his lover with the blood coming up to his mouth. Oh, gods, on the walls of that cave, their shadows were of two young lovers closely fitted as on a wedding day. The deaths of this story come to me not so that I make a trade of telling other people's misfortunes. They come to me, and so vividly, because they are my own misfortune. I am the sister who was hand-tied by fear. Antígona came to my house in a furious sudden flash and spoke to me. Ismene, I want your hands to help me bury the corpse of our beloved brother. I trust that, born noble, you have not turned petty. Her words were seething, but I had the spirit of a little animal huddled up, and knowing that reason tended her, I said that she was raving, that a blow of madness had struck her head. But it was fear, Antígona, because I knew our penalty would be death for burying him. Come, my sister, I begged you. Let us, rather, ask the dead to excuse us, and let the orders of the living powers prevail. But you rebuked me, saying, you, Ismene, seek assent from the world of the tyrant. I'll go after the favor of the gods, and left for the hill of our dead. Antígona, do you see this world below? The palace now bears the silence of a mausoleum. We are ruled by a breathing corpse, a king tormented who grows old swiftly. Dear sister, look. This is the face of our brother, as it was before the dogs and the vultures and putrefaction. And these late libations are from my little spirit full of remorse. In your elevated kingdom, ask Polinices to forgive me for the duty I did not do at the right time, because I shrank in the furrowed face of power. And tell him I already have a heavy punishment. To remember every day your deed that tortures and brings me to shame.